we had a message through from a mutual contact the other day, and they were asking, the first question they asked, have you had your first argument yet? It's like, not yet, but I think HubSpot might be our first argument soon.
I think it's just like, I think we joke about it, but it is super important. And when it came to writing the growth manager job spec, we put a lot of emphasis on it as well. And it's for a whole host of reasons, but I think if you have your ducks in a row with very easy access to information, it just makes the whole process much more seamless, right? Like it was the other day when you first started the sales outreach, I should say, you messaged me like, oh, Harry, like, how do I make sure I don't outreach the same contacts? And like, we had some separate lists, we had separate tagging and all that sort of stuff, and we could see at which stage of the cycle they were at and things like that. And it just makes the process much more seamless, much more efficient, and hopefully much more effective. So as individuals, as I said, and as for the teams that we've managed, and also could have fallen into the trap with 1225 as well, of the fact that you don't have to just jump on that half-hour Zoom call. There are multiple different ways to be having meetings, and finding those formats and being able to flex to the formats that work for different people is going to go such a long way in terms of forming connections and things like that. And the positive output so far is we get to play a lot more golf. But my point is, I think I'm really happy with the kind of like subconscious decision we made to change and flex meeting structures, because I think it's working pretty well. Startups, whether that be like services or SaaS companies or B2B companies, whatever, any startup, they always say it's the most stressful time. And I can totally see why, especially when you're worried about security or when you're worried about growth, or when you're worried about hiring. I can fully understand that. But I think with that focus that we have at the moment, it is probably actually one of the least stressful times that I've had in a very long time, because everything is inside of our control, and I think we back ourselves. So if we focus on whatever it may be, like solely for even a morning, we can get to where we want to be. So yeah, there's loads of different ways of phrasing it. Intensity is the strategy, the power of focus, or for us, the relentless focus on the customer experience. But it's all about just making things incrementally better.
Hello and welcome to episode number 16. Today's date is the 24th of July 2023. Welcome to Building. This is our podcast that charts our growth journey to setting up and scaling a growth marketing agency, 1225. Now, we're kind of 3 weeks into the main thrust of it. Harry, how has last week been?
Yeah, I think what I'm finding interesting is the things have gotten a bit busier, and we haven't been as strict with the podcast schedule. So we definitely need to get back on that. I think this is the second week where technically we've missed a week, all for good reasons. Like, we're incredibly busy, and busy in a good way. So whether that be from an internal operational perspective, whether that be recruitment, which we're working on, and I'm sure we'll get into, or whether it be client delivery or client sales. Like, we're busy on all the right fronts. We had a shorter week last week, which was nice, which I'm sure we'll come on to as well. But yeah, overall, I'd say things are going incredibly well. What do you think?
It's definitely been an interesting kind of 3 weeks in the office, working on 1225 full time. We're getting things done. A lot of things done quickly because it's so agile. There's just a couple of us. I know that will change in the future as more and more people join us. We'll go on to recruiting in a bit as well. But so far, it's kind of like it's a reset, and it's a breath of fresh air. So yeah, really enjoyed it. And yeah, we've kind of alluded to it already. We've missed the podcast recording. We usually record Building every Friday and try and aim to get it out every Tuesday. However, on Friday last week, we granted each other a day off from the busy kind of work schedule we've had, and we were in Hoylake near Liverpool watching the 151st Open Championship. How was it?
Yeah, I had a great time. I have never been to like a golf event before. Obviously played a lot of golf, but never been to an event, so was unsure what to expect. But yeah, really enjoyed the 2 days that we had there. We were there Friday, Saturday. As you say, my line manager kindly granted it off, and the same for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, had a really good time. I have to say, I don't know about you, but I am knackered. Like yesterday, after all that walking, Friday, Saturday, I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to just stay in bed, relax, recover. And today, I felt great this morning, but as we've gotten towards the end of the day, what we are now, 2:15, I definitely am feeling it a little bit. So looking forward to wrapping this podcast, finishing a few bits off, and then probably going to bed, if I'm honest. But yeah, it was a great weekend. How did you find it?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, if we're looking kind of red and sore on this podcast video, it's because we probably got windburnt and sunburnt on the Friday. But I loved it. Like watching Masters at work. Like, yeah, on TV, it looks great. You know, they do some amazing things, but you don't see it truly until you're like 5 feet away from Rory McIlroy taking the tee shot. Then it's a whole different world away. So, again, golf, I seem to find, I don't know why, it's like the closest manifestation of like a physical form of SEO in my mind, because golf, as Arnold Palmer put it, golf is deceptively simple but endlessly complicated. And I think some people see SEO that way. And we're saying, yes, it is simple. And some of the bits and pieces that you go down can be complicated, but actually to scale it, let's focus on the simple bits. And the other bit I liked from it, we walked past the corporate hospitality tents a few times, and every time you'd say to me, this time next year we'll be in there corporate hospitality with our clients, and that just made me giggle as well. So, but all in all, had a great time.
Nice. So one thing before we go in, obviously every week we follow a very specific, I guess, framework in terms of how we go through these podcast recordings. But I just want to ask you a question on something that you said in this intro section. You said that at the moment you're enjoying it, and it's a bit of a, breath of fresh air, as things are very agile at the moment. And you said, as we scale or as we start to employ people, you're sure that's not going to be the case. I'd be interested to see why you think that's going to change.
Great question. I just think with two of us, it's so much more agile in terms of we can ask a question, the other person agrees, disagrees, and we get it sorted, get it done. With a few more people, we will obviously put frameworks and processes in place to keep it as agile as possible, but we'll listen to people's ideas and kind of thoughts and processes to make us better. So I think collecting those ideas and that information at times will just add a little bit of time. Plus, we'll spend time on bits and pieces that we haven't done before necessarily, or people coming into the agency, we'll have to spend time with them, training them up in certain frameworks and ways of working as well. So it will add a bit of time to it.
And I'm going to follow up again further, and this is probably insight to everybody around what it's like in the office as well. But over recent weeks, as you say, we've been going at this 3 weeks. Brendan's developed the use of a new phrase, which I find very interesting, which you just said there as well, which was bits and pieces. Why do you keep saying bits and pieces?
I don't know. I literally don't know. It's a quick fire way to sum up everything that's going on in my head. I suppose I'm trying to keep things as simple as possible, because in my head I've got recruiting, sales decks, sales outreach, LinkedIn messages. It's like that. I've spent a crazy amount of time checking the analytics. Oh, okay, that one worked because it's got hashtags on it, or that one worked because it was a video instead of a photo. That's probably why. Maybe I'll try and stop it. Call me out every time I say bits and pieces or bits like that. You've pulled me up on that a couple of times already, but yeah, I'll try. Now I'm going to have a psychological thing. If I say it, I'm going to be like, cut, edit this bit out. So yeah, fair. I'm gonna have to get you on these every week. You get me. You make me stumble on this podcast just for a question or something. I'm going to do the same to you. I'm going to find a way. Maybe through bringing a topic to the table later. I'll get you on that.
Ramps up the pressure, but yeah. Okay, cool. Should we move into the status updates?
Yes, let's. So the past kind of week, because this is the look back to what we've been doing over the past week, I think one of the main areas has been looking at hiring. For hiring, we've got two kind of open positions currently out there for people to apply. We've had some applicants. We've already had screening calls, and we've got a couple of interviews lined up for this week. So again, that's going to be interesting. A couple of interviews. What we like to do is get, obviously our process for recruiting is kind of a 15-minute screening or intro call with the applicant, just to find out about why they're applying, kind of a bit more about their experience. And then we go to a kind of standard interview, but as part of that interview, we give them a 10-minute kind of presentation task just to present us an SEO strategy or organic search strategy. Usually in the past, I've done it open brief on a client of their choice. But what we've now decided to do, get them to do it for one of our clients that were already got in the business and already have done a strategy for, so that we can compare the kind of two strategies and see if there's ideas, or if their ideas would be a good fit for potentially that client in the future. And then from there, we'd potentially have a second interview as well after the first interview, just to make sure, ask a couple of follow-up questions. So we're trying to make this as quick and as simple for applicants as possible, with a kind of 2 to 4 week timeline. But again, it depends. Some people are in different situations compared to others. So I think that side of things, once we've got the applicants, is fine. But again, it's getting the sort of applicants that we want for the roles in, that is proving as ever to be the difficult element. Sometimes we can wait months to get an applicant that fits the bill. Sometimes two come along at once from previous experience as well. So yeah, hiring, we're motoring on that. We may have to spend a bit of the budget if Harry, the paymaster, allows us to advertise, but we'll see. We're getting applicants through, so we need to take that on face value, have a chat with each of them, and send them through to interview as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think what's important to say there is that, I guess, this slightly tweaked approach that we're taking around asking a applicant to present a strategy for an existing client back to us, conscious of the optics of that, can look like we're asking people to essentially do a free strategy for us. That's absolutely not what it is. I think it's just taking some experience from, like you say, where we've done this historically, whereby a person would present this strategy to us, and the first couple of questions would be just fact finding more about the business, and that can kind of slow the process down a little bit, especially as what we don't want to be doing is having the entire 1 hour interview taken up by just like questions on that presentation. So what we thought was, by having it presented to us on an existing client of 1225, we're a lot more informed, so we can skip out some of those like smaller like understanding and scene setting questions straight into some of the juicier areas, very very much hyper focused on the bits that are applicable to the role, whether that be for our growth managers, whether that be for our consultants. So yeah, just slightly conscious of the optics there, but again, hopefully we've done a pretty good job of explaining that to the applicants as well, which is like, we're not asking for free work here. What we're asking for is just a way of us all being much more informed as we come to that initial first stage interview.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think a presentation like this, when it comes to strategy, it's really quick and easy way to start understanding their level of knowledge around organic search, around SEO, like, because you can delve into certain tasks. Oh, why have you chosen that technical task before that content piece of work? So that's why we do it. And yeah, it's a great point to add about the optics there, because we were conscious of that. Oh yeah, we can get someone else to do the strategy for us. But again, we've done strategies before. It's just to work out people's level of understanding. So that's hiring. That's mainly on the kind of SEO consultant front. We've also got a business kind of development role available as well. And one curious element, like, we probably had about 6 or 7 people apply for the SEO or the organic search consultant role, but they're also applying for the business development role.
Yeah.
And why? The job descriptions are different. One is heavily focused on sales, which we've already modified a couple of times to make sure that.
Yeah, I think from my side, and again, we spoke about this morning, which is the way that we've recorded these, whereby we recorded the first 13, 14 prior to launch, is we're probably going to have to start releasing these a bit quicker, because what I will anticipate is by the time this one comes to being released, we likely would have filled both positions. But my take on it is, again, we've asked some people directly. This is very much I'm keeping my options open. And I'm keeping my options open thing is the only thing I can really relate it to is the exact conversation we went through when we were thinking about how to position 1225, which is, we didn't have to niche down and say, you know what, we primarily work with B2B and e-commerce companies. We didn't have to. But the problem is that there's no real message or focus if we say we work for everybody all of the time. And I think that's a bit like I'm just going to apply for both roles and keep my options open. Well, you're going to be much better at one of them. So which one is it? Back yourself and apply for that one. Yes, once you're in the role, potentially if we find a better fit for you in a different position, that's fine. We can move in there. But I think it's all about the focus and like choosing what you want to do and then going for that. And I think to me, and hopefully this comes across in a positive way, but that it's a bit nothingy if you apply for both. You lose a bit of shine, in my opinion, by applying for both. So if, at the time of this being released, we do have open positions, please apply for one, not multiple. That'd be very much appreciated.
Fair. So that's all the work on the hiring side. Again, we're both kind of taking one side each. I'm kind of mainly looking at the organic search consultant, and you're looking at the business growth manager role as well. So that's hiring. That's to build us, because we've been, as ever, very busy with the sales outreach and client proposals. How have you found the sales work so far?
I think the ones that you've had are definitely moving through, I guess, from exploratory call to proposal a lot quicker than the ones that I've been working on. The one that's been a primary focus for me, probably for the last 3 or 4 podcast recordings, is still ongoing. Twice I think we've closed them, in the sense of like twice a contract has been sent over with I'd say at least I'd say verbal, with the verbal confirmation they're going to have been signed, and then for whatever reason more questions have been asked, or the deal structure has had to be slightly tweaked, or whatever it may be. We're still there. Like, my ambition with this was to try and close it without a sales proposal, because it seemed like a great fit. They wanted to get it started very quickly. We wanted to get it started very quickly. It's at the point now where it probably is going to need a couple of slides to get this across the line, which is totally fine, but a bit frustrating, as I wanted to be the first one to close a client without the need for a pitch deck. And it's not really going to be a pitch deck, but it's definitely going to need some kind of deck or proposal to get this across the line. I don't go into too much detail on things, because obviously it's between us and the client, but I think there are definitely things that I could have done better, and potentially having a deck to summarize some of this stuff could have been one of them. But I think equally it's getting to the point now whereby we have gone down the performance-based route for our pricing structures. We had agreed measurements. Those measurements have tried to be changed a couple of times, as have the commercials around it, plus the, I guess, needs and want from the client. We obviously know our worth, and we also know what our pipeline is like. And the worth is high, and our pipeline activity is high as well. And we need to portray that confidence across to the client as well. So yes, we are going to do some of the, I guess, benchmarking and reporting that has been spoken about. But at the same time, like, we need to go back from a position of strength here as well. That we want to work with you. We see huge opportunities, which we do, but there has to be a deal that works for both. And that is something a bit, I guess, newer to us. Like, we haven't like had to do that yet as a new agency, but that is something that I'll potentially have to go with over the next week or two if we still haven't got the deal across the line.
How's your mindset been with a kind of decision like that? Because it's a world away from being kind of part of a bigger agency, but now it's your own. Kind of, what are the thoughts that come into your head with this? Is it kind of, very early on, it felt like survival. We got to survive for 6 months, so get everyone in that we can get in. But actually, we can sit back. We've got our safety net in place within 3 weeks already. Do you need that?
I think there's 2 things to that. Like, I think you and I, we're aligned on 98% of things, I'd say, when it comes to 1225. I'd say the one thing that we haven't always been aligned on is the I guess your position has always been security first, whereas for me, like, I've been more opportunities focused than securities focused. So the driver for me hasn't necessarily been that, like, get the business in as soon as possible, therefore we can then have this conversation. I think for me it's been more like, how do I phrase this? I guess you've been looking at security primarily, and I've been looking at growth primarily, is probably the way to describe it. And for me, like, the output is probably the same. So to get the security, we needed to close stuff. To get the growth, we needed to close stuff. So we're still having the same output, but I think the primary motivation was potentially different. It is hard, if I'm honest. Like, I want the retainer fee, and I want to work with them as well. I think if it was if it's a group of people or a business that we didn't believe in or didn't want to work with, it'd be a lot easier to just probably, and we probably would have already walked away from it. But because we know the fit is there, both in terms of the people and the business, it is harder. But ultimately, like you say, like we have that security or we have the growth, whichever way you want to look at it. So it does make it easier. But I think even if we're down the road and we're at like a ridiculous revenue figure, I'm always going to find it hard to say no to a client if they fit like 2 of the 3 criteria.
Yeah, fair. That all makes sense. And it kind of also lends this conversation to the outreach kind of efforts that you in the main have been putting in. Should we start with the rejections, some funny rejections, or weirdly some kind of like habits, like not coming back to us for ages and suddenly coming back to us like twice in like an hour and then going away again? Why?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're definitely learning that people deal with things in different ways. And I think what's interesting is like you start to see yourself in those as well. Like to your point around, some people will say nothing for ages, have a really like hot hour and then disappear again. That was very much my approach to people who are trying to sell to me in my previous position. And I can now understand and appreciate the frustration that caused. But yes, we've spoken about it a few times in terms of weekly commitments and in terms of status updates before, that we are doing cold sales outreach, as I believe not just any agency, but I do think any business should really be doing. Like it makes a huge amount of sense to me, especially in the B2B space. We have been doing it. I think I've outreached maybe 15 or so at the moment over like a 3-part series with a bit more tailored content towards the end. But we could be doing much bigger numbers, but ultimately we want to kind of leave that pot that we've identified for our growth managers that come in. So we're just taking off what we deem, some of the lower hanging fruit at the moment. Thankfully, not too many rejections. I've actually only had 1 direct rejection, which is a very short and sweet no thanks. Got to admit, it hurt a little bit when you put all that time into the email, but at the same time, arguably the best. I'd rather have a no than no reply, because you can just chalk that off and say, okay, fine, I'll reach out again in 3 to 6 months, whatever it may be. On the more positive side of things, we've also had our first reply to the completely cold outreach as well. And I think we spoke about this when we were walking somewhere the other day, which is the breakup email always seems to be the one that gets some kind of response. So I sent a message saying, hey, look, sent you a couple. I can see you've opened them. I can see you've watched a bit of the launch video that we sent across, but obviously now isn't the right time. I'll reach out again in 3 to 6 months. And that one did get a reply saying, hey, it's been really chaotic, but let's have a conversation. So looking to get a call booked in for the back end of this week. Now, that is, I guess, a little bit of proof of concept that this could work, and then we'll slowly build from there. But yeah, if I was to summarize, I'd say 10% no, 10% yes, let's move forward, 80% no replies, but at least the email's getting opened. And when we talk about like brand category affiliation and things like that, this is part of that process. So yeah, I think it's something that I had to get comfortable with quite quickly, but to a point I'm starting to enjoy it now, but want to leave that pot for our growth managers that come in. That being said, you've also been doing some, and you said earlier, I think, that you have probably been spending a disproportionate amount of time on it, but how have you been finding it?
Look, I'm not as brave as you. Like you say I'm good at closing, but it's when I feel comfortable and I can have that conversation. So I've spoken about it on the podcast as well, the power of connections. So a couple of the contacts I had previously, like they said, whatever you need, let us know, we'll help you out. So that's exactly what I did. I went through kind of some of their connections, spotted that there was mutual connections there. And I just asked them for some insights that could help me kind of put that in my messaging to the potential client or the lead. And that has taken a bit more time, but actually it gives me a bit of an in, and it gives me a bit more of a personalized message to go to that person with. So yeah, at the minute I haven't had too much feedback, but I only did that late last week. So again, I'll follow up with them in the standard kind of 3 to 4 day kind of realm. But again, I've noticed a couple of people have been looking at my LinkedIn profile, maybe to say, who is this guy? Why is he messaging me? Or starting to actually look at what we're kind of putting out there on LinkedIn. So it wasn't necessarily the outreach, but it's the marketing side on LinkedIn, pushing out all the messages we've got as well. And actually coming up with the messaging, once you've got all of that information, that's not the hard part. The hard part is keeping up to date with HubSpot. So I've had previous managers who have banged me around the head for keeping HubSpot all nice and tidy. And now you are probably even worse because you do it in that kind of like, I'm not angry, I'm disappointed. Just doing it for me.
But
So,
again, like I am conscious of that. Like there were a few times when I've spotted like, oh, Brennan's added the email address but not created the company or whatever it may be, or created the contact properly. And like, yeah, I do agree. Like I think if I was giving, like, let's say we bring somebody in, they're moving into live management for the first time, like I'd always say, never go in and correct like things, like always bring someone up on it. But at the same time, to your point, like we are small, we are agile, and we know we're both working full out. And if there's something that I find more enjoyable with my, I guess, OCD, and having things complete is definitely part of that. Like I don't mind going in and correcting it, but yes, I would say out of everything, the only thing that I ever say, oh, Brendan, what's happening here, is always, is HubSpot up to date? If not, please can it be?
Yeah, see, I work in the approach of I'll keep doing stuff until you tell me otherwise. So it's good because you do pick me up, and I learn because I don't want to get on your wrong side early doors. We had a message through from a mutual contact the other day, and they were asking, the first question they asked, have you had your first argument yet? It's like, not yet, but I think HubSpot might be our first argument soon.
I think it's just like, I think we joke about it, but it is super important. And when it came to writing the growth manager job spec, we put a lot of emphasis on it as well. And it's for a whole host of reasons. But I think if you have your ducks in a row with very easy access to information, it just makes the whole process much more seamless, right? Like it was the other day when you first started the sales outreach, I should say, you messaged me like, oh, Harry, like, how do I make sure I don't outreach the same contacts? And like we had some separate lists, we had separate tagging and all that sort of stuff, and we could see at which stage of the cycle they were at and things like that. And it just makes the process much more seamless, much more efficient, and hopefully much more effective. So like I anticipate a world in which when we bring these growth managers in, this will probably be a bit of a bugbear of mine and something that we may clash on a little bit. But I think it's that thing of like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And if we can keep that CRM system, which for us is HubSpot, up to date, it'll just make everything better. So yeah, not something I'm going to apologize for, but something I do anticipate being annoying for some people.
Yeah, no, it's not annoying because it's a bit like all the other bits and pieces we do to keep focused, which I'm sure you'll come on to at some point. It's like, because it's just two people, it's only one other person you're almost letting down. So it's actually focusing on my mind. It's like, oh God, I better move that into the correct folder. Oh, I better make sure that's right and this is right. It seems actually when there's more people, there's almost less accountability in some senses, whereas now you're being held to account each day, especially when all it takes is a quick look over your computer screen in the office, and it's like, oh, okay, I better get on with that. So, perfect. Well, I think that leads us onto the final element to update on. And Harry, you have been working on our kind of launch press release.
Yeah, so we're 3 weeks in, really, aren't we? Like almost 4 weeks in now, almost finished July since we technically officially launched, probably about 3 weeks. And we haven't really outreached that to like relevant sectors via press releases and outreach yet. Now, the reason for that is we've wanted to work with somebody that we deem an expert in the industry, someone who we've been working with for a long time. And it's just taken a little bit of time to get the deal, the information, everything across the line. That has, as of Friday, all been done. So work starts today, basically. So hopefully by the time this comes out, you would have seen us in some relevant publications and things like that. But yeah, we should be outreaching that by the end of this week. So moving in the right direction on that front.
Perfect. Right, moving on to your section of the podcast in terms of building. So you've got some show notes, and without context, it's got a question there, but I think I'll let you lead.
Okay, yeah, sure. So building is, I guess, the name of the podcast and also the name of this section, which isn't a status update and it isn't commitments looking forward. It's kind of just like what decisions and things like that are we making within the agency day to day, or that we're working on longer term that we think are worth discussing. And I have a couple of things that I thought we'd start with. I do have a question down, but I think we've covered it to a point. So I'm going to save that for next week because I have some more context that I think we can talk about next week, which will then come on to that question. But some of the things that I want to talk about are, I think, given the fact that we now run and own 1225, like we can kind of mold it to be as flexible as we like in many ways. So as you spoke about earlier, we gave ourselves Friday of last week off. Friday of this week, we're going to go play golf. So we are giving ourselves, I guess, a bit of time back as not as a reward, but like we're just being as flexible as we want to be with the agency. But I think one of the things that we've started to do and are doing moving forward as well, which is being a lot more flexible with the structure of meetings. And I think that flex is something that we've overlooked as individuals, and like you and I for the teams that we managed over the last couple of years, especially since COVID, is that we have kind of all just fallen into the pattern of like, I really want to speak to that person. I'll drop them a message, see if we can get a Zoom or whatever. Let's just call it online meetings rather than going for every type of platform there is out there. But like you just go straight into that half hour or 20-minute speculative online meeting. And that is great in some ways. Like it's very quick, it's very efficient. But at the same time, like it just doesn't work for everybody. And no one really looks forward to that next Zoom call, right? Like it, and that's got lost a little bit. So I think what we've started to do, and I think it's happened almost by accident, is we're pushing meetings into structures that work for us and the people who we're having those meetings with, right? So we're doing a bit of a, how do I put this? We're negotiating on some things that will impact 1225 quite heavily at the moment. And we decided as of last week to push that meeting away from being a virtual meeting to being like, hey, look, let's grab dinner. We can walk you through everything. We can take our laptops if we need to, but let's make it a lot more informal and a lot more personable, right? And really rely on that human connection. Same thing, again, on the hiring front. We have somebody who's interested in a position, someone who we know quite closely in terms of within our network. And we could have just gone, yeah, sure, come down, take a look at the office and be done. We're like, hang on, there's an opportunity here for it to work for everybody. You play golf, we play golf. Let's just jump on the golf course. We can talk about it a little bit. We can give you some context, but much slower over the course of 3-4 hours and things like that. And I think we have, as individuals, as I said, and as for the teams that we've managed, and also could have fallen into the trap with 1225 as well, of the fact that you don't have to just jump on that half-hour Zoom call. There are multiple different ways to be having meetings, and finding those formats and being able to flex to the formats that work for different people is going to go such a long way in terms of forming connections and things like that. And the positive output so far is we get to play a lot more golf. But my point is, I think I'm really happy with the kind of like subconscious decision we made to change and flex meeting structures, because I think it's working pretty well.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's, for some reason, once I've established the relationship with someone, I much prefer a quick 2-minute phone call, literally picking up a phone and ringing them up. Just answer this question, I'll leave you alone. That for me works brilliantly as well. But yeah, that flex in the structure of meetings, it works. But also, I'm enjoying the fact that we've got an office space and we're going there more kind of regularly than before. We'd be in the office once a week, twice a week, whatever it may be. Now we're going in pretty much every day, even for a little bit. And it just works. It allows you to get things, ask that quick question that enables you to get on with work. So that's really good. And then your next point makes me chuckle a little bit, because I know how hard you've been working on this front, and that is finding good developers. Do you want to explain?
So I'll start by prefacing this with, if any developers are listening, firstly, I'm not calling anybody out, but secondly, if you're like an outsourced dev agency, please don't contact me. Like that part is fine. But what I will say is, over the last couple of weeks, we have been working with a client who needs to restructure some of their site, and as part of that restructure, needs to build some new page templates in WordPress. And I think actually this specifically comes down to finding good WordPress developers. So we've been on the lookout for a WordPress agency, likely offshore, but could also be UK based. And I can't tell you, like, the volume of proposals we've had back is obscene. Like, I think we were at 40 plus in the first 30 minutes of us putting this essentially job ad out. Like it's been flying in. And people, as part of the process, like for transparency, we've been using Upwork, like you have to propose a bid and things like that. So I put my budget out there and people have been proposing bids at that amount. So, hey, I have X amount of money to spend. I need these things done. And people have said, yep, I can definitely do that in that time frame and I can do it for this money. So they say. You then jump on the call and then the upsell comes of like, no, that's just a speculative bid. We need to get some more detail from you, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, that's going to be 3, 4, 5x what you've put as your budget. Now, firstly, that's a massive waste of time for everybody. Secondly, one of the things I did was I asked these developers, a few of them that I've spoken to, I don't want to fall into this trap again. Can you just tell me what about the brief was unclear? Because I put a full brief with videos and things like that together. And 3 of them came back and said, no, the brief is absolutely spot on. I had no questions. Well, if that's the case, why did you tell me you could meet my budget to then tell me actually needed 6x that amount of money? So what I was ended up with was I was finding we had communication problems, we had expectation management problems, and we couldn't get it for the budget that we'd set. So yeah, I have spent a disproportionate amount of time speaking with developers via Upwork and Twitter and LinkedIn until we've found a developer that we're, I think, comfortable with, albeit at a slightly higher price point. So there is some significant opportunities there, I think, hence a conversation that we're going to be having on Thursday of this week. But yeah, I did not anticipate it being that difficult to find, I guess, solid WordPress developers where we could form a partnership on, I guess, like trust and direct communication and things like that. But we're making some progress now, but I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to rant, I think.
Good. No, but I think you're clear because I think we can tie it in with hiring as well. It's like those qualification questions that you get from all these people. Like, we want people to be able to work in the office when it comes to our job ads, like at least 2.5 days, remote hybrid. And we've got people applying from around the world. We even spoke to one of them, wanting like after the job, and it's like, you're not going to be able to work in the office 2.5 days. It's not possible. Why have you applied? And it's all of those qualification elements that I think these sites that we use need to sort out as well. So, but yeah, it's a great point, and it's enjoyable at times to see your reactions in the office as you kind of get annoyed by something that's happened on that chase. But yeah, thanks again, because again, it's one of the clients that I'm kind of leading on the delivery front. So you're helping me out there. If I had to go chasing developers, I don't know what would happen. Okay, now to our favourite segment of the pod. Well, I say it's our favourite. It's our favourite when we don't have to do it, and maybe our least favourite when we do. But it's topic to the table time. We've got 2 options today, and just because of kind of what we've talked about in the building section as well, I'm going to choose that and give you the forum to expand out on some of those elements as well. So it's you've titled it up because you get to choose the title of your topic, The Power of Focus.
Yeah, we've actually spoken about the power of focus before, maybe like 3-4 podcasts ago, but I wanted to come back round to it in a slightly different way. So I think when we spoke about it last time, we spoke about like how much we're getting done, which is great, but it can like also lead you down like different rabbit holes, right? Because you can pick an area to focus on and you just keep going, and you're going, oh, I'm so focused on that thing, it doesn't matter. But then I heard on another podcast someone say it in a slightly different way, which I think has really helped me understand what we're trying to do, and then I'll tie it back around to the actual point. So on another podcast I heard the phrase like intensity is the strategy, and I think that is very, very powerful in terms of a way of, like, I guess, understanding. So when we talk about focus, what we actually mean is intensity. And when we say intensity, what we actually mean is something that we talk about a lot in our marketing materials, but a lot in terms of our strategies as well, which is a relentless focus on, and then insert word. For us, it's a relentless focus on the customer experience. And I've really been thinking about what that means as well. And believe it or not, I actually did a apprenticeship in customer service. And one of the things that they spoke about, side note, which was the course was interesting to say the least. But one of the things that it did speak about quite a lot was like the fact that essentially everybody is a customer in some way. Like, for example, like I'm a customer of yours, you're a customer of mine, even if it was just in terms of internal stakeholders, all the way through to our clients and our partners and things like that. And I think when we talk about a relentless focus on the customer experience, I think what we actually mean is just a relentless focus on relationships. And when we mean a relentless focus on relationships, what we actually mean is we're just in the business of making sounds way too deep, but making people's lives better in some kind of way, or easier, or more efficient, or whatever it may be. And one of the things that we've been doing for us, so if we're talking about a relentless focus on us, is having a huge focus on those like initial 2 to 3 hours of the day. And we've started to call them power mornings, for example. I'm just like, what is the one thing that's actually going to make a difference today? Let's go smash that out. And we've spoken about that before. But I think it's just a new framing around things that I've been thinking about over the last couple of days, which is, what does the phrase a relentless focus on the customer experience mean? And I think what we're actually talking about there is just how do we improve things even incrementally? So from a client perspective and their clients, it's like, okay, well, how do we provide more information to aid the buying cycle? Or how do we be able to build brand category affiliation so that we build trust, therefore making buying decisions easier? All the way through to, well, how are we making our lives better? Or we're making our lives better by being more flexible when it comes to meeting structures, or being very, very focused for those first 2 to 3 hours of the day. And I think what it's all coming around to is just a much more positive working environment. Like I was saying to my partner the other day, it's weird. Like everybody talks about startups, whether that be like services or SaaS companies or B2B companies, whatever, any startup, they always say it's the most stressful time. And I can totally see why, especially when you're worried about security or when you're worried about growth, or when you're worried about hiring. I can fully understand that. But I think with that focus that we have at the moment, it is probably actually one of the least stressful times that I've had in a very long time, because everything is inside of our control. And I think we back ourselves. So if we focus on whatever it may be, like solely for even a morning, we can get to where we want to be. So yeah, there's loads of different ways of phrasing it. Intensity is the strategy, the power of focus, or for us, the relentless focus on the customer experience. But it's all about just making things incrementally better.
Very good. Now, I must admit, I got quite distracted halfway through that because my wife just barged in, and I was like, ugh. So that's why I potentially look scared or jump out my skin. So do watch a video of this podcast. But yeah, I agree, basically. It's having that focus and kind of understanding it. And I suppose you touched on it a bit, but how do you prioritize certain elements? Is there any frameworks that you use?
I think that there can be, and I hear a lot of different people talk about a lot of different things, especially like if you listen to productivity podcasts and like the ways people use to-do lists or journaling or like decision-making frameworks and things like that. I think there's a lot of different ways of doing it. And to a point, I think we do work similar in terms of when we start the day and we go through what we call the daily commitments, where we kind of like are prioritizing using some kind of methodology. But I think for me at the moment, we're in this every day, and it's all we think about for those hours between like 8 and 4 or 8 and 4:30, whatever it may be. You kind of just get a gut instinct of what needs to happen and what it needs to happen. So I would say, yes, we kind of are using prioritization frameworks to a point, but at the same time, you just have that gut feel about what needs to be done and when it needs to be done.
Nice, I like it. My turn next week. Right, on to weekly commitments. I'll let you go first. What have you got coming up?
Yeah, so I think we definitely haven't made as much headway with the marketing plan as we need to, especially as we like start to slowly draw to a close our first month. We need to be hitting some of that a bit harder than we have done. Don't get me wrong. I do think we have a lot of marketing activity happening, but I do think there could be some more, kind of back to the like previous point, a lot more focused activity that we should be doing, which we're planning on. But in terms of like building on some of that, one of the things that so the thing that I really want to work on is the, I guess, newsletter sign up process, and how we then, I guess, divide out people signing up to that newsletter. So there will be a newsletter coming soon. How do we make that process as seamless as possible? So I'm going to be working on that this week. Beyond that, applying for a few speaking gigs. There have definitely been some that have come up over the last couple of weeks that we have seen that I really want to put my name forward for. So I'll be doing that. It's just that they require a bit more thought, as again mentioned in a previous podcast, the ones that I've applied for so far have been unsuccessful with. And I want to make sure that that starts to turn. And I think one of the ways that that can turn is, again, by putting more focus onto it for a short period of time to get those out. So we'll be working on those this week. And I'm going to put it here, even though I don't know if it'll happen, but I really want to close a client. At the minute, I think we're like, what? All of our clients for 0 in terms of the comparison. You've closed all of them, I believe. So I just want to close a client, and I'm really working on it. I have some work to do back end of today, early tomorrow, to hopefully get it closer to contract signature. But yeah, if I did nothing else for the next 7 days but close a client, I'd be very happy.
Very good. I may hopefully close another client this week as well. We'll wait and see. Perfect. For me, it's more sales outreach, making sure that HubSpot is up to date when I do such a thing. But just go back to a couple of clients. And previously in this episode as well, we were talking about people not getting back to us. I've got this one person who keeps coming back to me asking the same sort of questions. So I might give it the old breakup email soon and just see if they respond to that, because we've got other opportunities to go after as well. Client delivery, got a few bits and pieces this week to do. One of them's CookieBot. So really looking forward to that. Getting my head back into the technical elements. Look, I enjoy the setups of things, and after what you've just spoken about for the last 5 to 10 minutes, that really is a focus, like a couple of hours there, working that all out and getting it working. So yeah, looking forward to that. And then again, I'm going to probably help you with the marketing plan. I'm enjoying LinkedIn posting. Having not posted on LinkedIn for about 10 years, I've now posted about 6 times in a week. So working on that, getting the analytics. But we're also we're growth marketing agents through the use of organic search content, audience first organic search content. We need to start producing content for our website as well. Number of different ways that we can do that. But I think also it's for people that we want to bring in from recruitment, so they've got a bit more about us and a bit more about our kind of ethos and mentality around kind of team first elements. So I want to start producing some pieces of content that can sit on there, because that's the kind of area that I want to focus on when I'm kind of giving a bit of thought leadership, like you have on these kind of focus areas and sales and so on. So that is me for next week as well.
So I think a busy week ahead. We're obviously on a Monday. We normally record on a Friday, so maybe we'll have another Friday recording as well, just to catch up. But yeah, I think my summary so far would be we're 3.5, 4 weeks in. Things are going as well. Well, I mean, financially better than we had anticipated, and I am enjoying the momentum that we're building. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's perfectly summed it up over these past 3-4 weeks. We ended last week with a bit of golf. We're going to end this week with a bit of golf. So I think our outro, if I get it right this time, if you listen to the last episode, I said it the wrong way around, but swing well, putt true. To help us build our audience, please like, share and subscribe. If you listened on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review. And if you watched us on YouTube, please leave a question or comment and we'll get back to you. Thank you.